Africa that went so far back that they were preserved to a great extent. Now, the point that we are making is that because of this intrusion, because of this electronic kidnapping that we are describing, that influence has been clearly dispersed. That influence has been clearly weakened. That influence has been clearly reduced in such a way that it has never been reduced before. And in the process of doing so, we have a generation that is very frightening in terms of the absence of self-consciousness and self-direction. Now, let's come to Cal State. Let's bring it right here. What is wrong? What is the problem of being educated in an environment that is predominated by someone else? What is the problem? What is the danger? What is problematic about being educated in an environment predominated by someone else? Answer: nothing implicitly. Nothing is implicitly wrong with that. Unless the person who is predominating that educational system happens to be someone who is not interested in your survival. There is nothing wrong with being educated in an environment that may be predominated by some other cultural group or some other racial group or some other ethnic group, as long as that ethnic group is not inimical to your own survival. As long as that ethnic group is committed to your development as a human being, as a people, as a culture, to be compatible with their own commitment to themselves. The problem for us in being in environments such as this is that we are in an environment where we are being educated not only by aliens, but by aliens whose commitment is not to ourselves, but to themselves. Now, this is a problem. This is a serious problem. The word education is very fundamental in what it means. It means educere. It comes from the Latin, educere, educe, to pull out. So contrary to what we've been taught, that somehow education is an external process or an external system, the reality of education, based upon its root definition, means that the educational experience should be an educing experience. What does that mean? That means that your education should pull out what you already are. Not put something in to where there was nothing, the tabula rasa concept that we are a blank screen and whoever writes upon the screen defines the structure of the human being and all that mess. The reality of it is that the reality of education is that an educational environment is one which stimulates and cultivates what is already inside. Now, where do we get this from? Well, they tell us that the founders of Western education were the Greeks. Is that what they say? Of course that's what they say. Because it is important that we believe that there was no education before the Greeks did what they did. It is important that we accept this assumption that there was no participation in mental and spiritual and human cultivation, that civilization did not emerge until the Greeks woke up one morning bright and early and said, we are now alive. We have come into a new awareness. And they proceeded to lay out mathematics and philosophy and chemistry and medicine and every other endeavor under the sun overnight, all by themselves. Well, you know out here in California that that's a lie. Now, some places out east, they don't know that yet, but we're trying to tell them. We'll come back to that in a second. The point of it is, though, is that the Greeks understood, based upon what they had been taught, that education required an environment that cultivated what was inside. Where did they get that from? They got that from their teachers. They got that from the masters who taught them what they knew, because they knew nothing before they went to school. And they went to school to be educated by the masters of human development and human processes and human consciousness and cultivation. And that is the African people, the people in Africa. Listen. So, what they understood and what they learned there was the number one lesson The lesson that was written over the portals of every major temple, which were the universities in that time along the Nile Valley. Universities that had been there 10, 12,000 years before the Greeks ever decided to go kidnapping and stealing and visiting across the pond. And that was that there was a reality that people began learning with, and it was man, know thyself. Now that was lesson number one. It was written over the portals of the temples. Look, Plato didn't dream that up. The Greek philosophers didn't dream that up. That didn't come up out of somebody's Western mind. That was an old lesson which said that the fundamental principle of education is that people must build from self-knowledge. Simple. What else will you build from? If you are going to grow utilizing the resources that are yours, if you grow from the knowledge of something outside of yourself, you become something owned by that thing. Your nature is changed. But an education must build upon the nature of who and what you are. That's why I said earlier, if in fact the person responsible for the educational system is one whose nature is the same as your own, it's no problem. Which is why the Greeks were able to learn so much, because there was a universal human system that existed there among the African people. So they came in and they were able to learn about themselves within a universal system. But they took that universal system back to Europe, turned it upside down, put a stamp on it which was their own stamp, removed the universal principles and made it uniquely customized to themselves, exalted them while debasing their teachers, and claimed themselves to be the supreme. And in doing so, they began to corrupt the fundamental teachings of the ancient times. We're still talking about Cal State. Be patient. The point of it is that any environment that is honest, any environment that is a true educational environment, is an environment which is rooted in and grows out of self-knowledge. Any environment which does not do that is not an educational environment. It may be a training environment, because training is the way that you begin to do things that are not necessarily within the confines of your own historical nature. A dog can be made to walk on two hind legs, wearing a dress and moving on a whistle. A monkey can be made to wear a diaper and carry a bottle around and act like a baby. A lion can be made to jump through a fiery hoop. You can do all kinds of things to life forms when you train them. When you train something, you impose an alien reality or alien nature on their nature. And in doing so, you make things like Frankenstein monsters and all these other weird things which are not themselves. Now, in an environment where people are being trained, what happens is that in the course of time, they begin to lose awareness, lose direction, lose a sense of vision, and essentially develop no potency in who they are. They develop no power based upon who they are. They develop no effectiveness based upon who they are. Instead, they begin to grow to increasingly try to become someone else. Now, you know, this is interesting because this is not a new concept. The truly educated African scholars have been saying this for decades and decades and decades. Du Bois was saying that the biggest problem of the Negro, so-called Negro, was the double consciousness. A double consciousness, being yourself and somebody else. Carter G. Woodson, the so-called, the people have pegged the father of Negro history, he laid down as a fundamental principle of his writings that miseducation was the major problem faced by African people. Miseducation is the process of getting information that is not cultivating who you are. Now you see, this means that what, 1930, Dr. Woodson wrote this? In 1930, you know what, 60, almost 50 some years ago, he was dealing with the fact that going to school is not a culture-free event. Getting an education was not a universal experience. Many of us